All right. Hello guys. So on yesterday you should have went through the Desmos activity for exploring quadratic functions, and today we're going to go a little bit more in depth and also show you what those questions will look like on a STAR test. So there are essentially three transformations. We have a translation, a dilation, and a reflection. The translation is going to shift a graph in one of four directions. It's going to move it up, down, left, or right. A dilation is a transformation that makes the graph narrow or wider than the parent graph. And then the reflection is going to flip the graph over the x or y axis. So it's basically going to change the direction that the graph opens. All right, first take a look at the translation. As we said that there are four movements. So two of those movements are vertical, which means that it's moving the graph up or down. So here in black, you will see the parent function. All right, we always want to start with the parent function. It's going to be in the middle, sitting right there at 0. In the blue, we have f of x plus k. So if we are adding a value, it is going to slide the graph up. So you can see that this blue graph is up above the black parent function. If we subtract a value, and we call that our k, it's going to slide the graph down and cause it to be below the below the x-axis, like the red graph. The other direction is horizontal, again, adding and subtracting, but notice this time the adding and subtracting is happening inside of the parentheses, which means that we are changing our x value. So it's going to be sliding the graph along the x-axis left to right. If we subtract, you got to be careful here because it's a little tricky. If we subtract, it's actually going to slide our graph to the right. So when I take away a value, pushes the graph to the right, and if I add a value, it's going to shift that graph to the left. Okay, so if I add or subtract outside of the brackets or the parentheses, it's going to move the graph up and down vertically. If I add or subtract inside, it's going to shift the graph horizontally left and right. The dilation is going to cause the graph to become more narrow or wide. Again, we start with the parent function, which is the black graph in the center. If we multiply it by a larger number, a number that is larger than 1, it actually makes the graph smaller. Again, you should have noticed this yesterday when you explored in Desmos, that it actually is going to stretch the graph and it's going to make it more narrow. And if we multiply by a number between 0 and 1, meaning a fraction or a decimal, it is going to compress the graph or make the graph more wide. All right, so multiplying it by a value is either going to make it narrow or wide. So the larger the number, the smaller the graph is going to get, and the smaller the value, the wider the graph will be. And then lastly, we have a reflection. Simply, if we put a negative value in front of our function, it is going to reflect over the x-axis, and instead of opening up, your parabola will open down. Okay. All right, so this is kind of a summary of what we said here, and this is what we call the vertex form of the equation. So here you can see all of those transformations because a graph can have more than one transformation. So again, if we multiply it by a number out front, it's going to either cause a reflection or a dilation. If it is positive, then the graph is going to be opening up, as you see here. And if we put a negative, again, that is going to cause our reflection to open down. The dilation occurs with our a value. If it's greater than 1, if it's large, it's going to make it narrow. And if it's between 0 and 1, it's going to make it wider. Then we have this k value that's outside the brackets. That is going to cause the graph to move up and down. And then we have our h value, which is inside the parentheses, and that's going to cause it to move left and right. And if you see an equation that looks like this, that has something being added or subtracted inside and outside of the parentheses, that means that you are going to have two transformations. That means that it is moving both vertically and horizontal. All right, so I'm going to stop this video here, and then in the next video, I'm going to show you what these questions look like on previous STAR tests.